All right. Hello, everybody. So the first thing I want to tell you about today is about the $115 billion question, right? So each one of you knows about business to consumer business. So Coca-Cola just sold you a small can. You drank it, you weren't happy. Okay, you forgot about it. Okay, so nothing happened. But when a business sells to a business, there are much more risks to actually take into account. So let's take one of those. Okay, first of all, it's much more expensive to buy a product from one business to my business. And if I buy the wrong ones, I'm going to get fired. I can ruin my entire business, and everybody's going to be laughing at me. And when you're actually selling to a different business, that's a long process. It doesn't start with just like one phone call. Okay, did you want this Coca-Cola can? It's like, okay, no problem. It's a much longer process where you're not selling to one person, you're selling actually to a group. So I'm going to tell you about a small dream of mine when I was around 10. I said I'm going to visit all Disneylands in the world. So I visited almost all in Europe, in the United States, etc. And when I started SalesPredict, I thought, okay, this is my chance to visit Japan and visit the last Disneyland in the world. And this is what I thought sales is going to look like. But instead, what I found out in the last couple of years that salespeople actually look like that. And I want to tell you how the process looks like. So first of all, a salesperson in a business-to-business is getting a huge list of people, like 50,000 people he needs to call to. Where did he get those people names? It's either coming from a website. How many times you go to a website, there's like a contact form, so you can actually download a white paper, something like that. So behind the scenes, your name and address and email actually going into some kind of database, a CRM system of the company you're registering to. How many times did you go to an exhibition that was just like this note, do you want to be in this competition, win a small airplane or something like that, just put your card here. So what happens behind the scene, okay, you're getting this small airplane, or at least one of them, but this, your name and everything goes inside their CRM system. Do you know how much one person name, which is going to actually be qualified, meaning he's relevant to your business cost? So the cheapest one, and considered like a huge deal, it's $400 per person. So your name, if you're relevant to the business, is $400. And then a small process of a few steps. So in different businesses, it's a bit different. So it's around, let's say, 6 to 15 steps of sales. So they're calling him, hello, do you want my product? Okay, he says, oh, why did you call me? Okay, the next one you're calling him is like, okay, I'm interested. And it's like, okay, in our next meeting, maybe you should bring your manager. Do you want to see our webinar? Do you want to see our more papers? Do you want to talk to our customers? And after around like 6 to 12 steps, this is where the sales ends. And this takes approximately 1 year. Right? And it doesn't matter if you're selling a $5,000 product or actually $1 million product all over the phone. So this is approximately the distribution of the product size that those salespeople send all over the phone. Okay? So it can be like almost like millions of dollars, and the same thing for like $5,000. Distribution is very similar. And companies today in the sales and marketing department are divided to approximately 3 groups. The direct sales, it's still those people with the suits who are going to different customers, like, hello, do you want to buy? I'm like a very respectful person. But a lot of the business stopped doing that. Too expensive. Doesn't scale. So they're moving to something called inside sales. It's a lot of people, really smart, energetic people, who are on the phone calling you and asking you, hello, do you want our product? And then moving on to the next person. And those people are fueled with those lists of people they're getting from the marketing. So many of the businesses today in the business-to-business are actually marketing or inside salespeople. And you would say, okay, when they call over the phone, they probably have a few questions they ask you to understand whether you're relevant to their business or not. But what I was surprised to know is that they don't. Each business has a completely different question. So many of them ask, okay, do you have the money? Are you the right person? Okay? But some others just asking you, are you the decision maker in this time frame? And the other ones are just like, no, are you interested in the general direction of my industry? Okay? So qualification of a lead, this like first name and last name they got, is very different in different companies. But the only thing which is in common, and it's like a huge problem in this business, is that you have 3,000 people coming in each month through your website, through a list they bought from somewhere, but eventually less than 1% actually buys the product. And this is what I want to talk to you about, is can we change the way companies do business? And this is what we do. Okay? So first of all, we're a startup, we're not doing any services, so we actually have to find a way to do that and improve the sales completely automatically. So we start with a machine learning approach. We connect to our customers' data. So many of you maybe know Salesforce. and if you don't, you should buy their stock. It's a company who's making around $20 billion a year, maybe $4 billion in revenues. And what they're providing as a nice database for salespeople to use on the cloud. And this is an example for a CRM. What most of those companies have is examples of people who they managed to sell to in the past and people who they didn't manage to sell to in the past. And throughout the process, they fill in a lot of information they asked over the phone. It can be like free tax, it can be like enums they're filling in, it can be like different numbers about the revenues of this company, everything they can find out about the company they're trying to sell to. So we're actually taking all this data and studying like different processing on that. Okay? Part of it is from the information of the customer the data belongs to. And the other thing is information. We're going to the web and getting information about this simple person they're trying to sell to. And we're going to go through this. And what we eventually have is for our machine learning is examples of here are good customers, here are bad customers, and here are a lot of characteristics that we have about them. And our system builds a classifier, machine learning classifier, for each one of our customers that eventually, in real time, where they're going to get a new lead, this first name and last name, is going to give you the probability of this person actually being a potential customer. And what we already have is, for several of our customers, we have the different models, and we see over time how much the conversion from a lead to a customer is going on with them. And I can see it like from our mutable ones. And all the time, we're having this monitoring, understanding where they stand, and understanding the processes they go through to actually make a deal. Okay? But this market is actually dynamic. When I started it, I said, OK, we can actually build one classifier. OK, I'm going to be happy, never talk to this company ever again. That's it. But this doesn't work. Why? Because today they changed their website, and they have completely different people. The marketing person actually quit, or they actually moved to a completely new business. And this model that you built for them once actually has to be adapting to the customer all the time. So we ended up having this machine learning classifier that doesn't build only once, but continues building itself on a weekly basis. And not only that, what I was surprised to know is like, OK, I'm not in algo trading. My system doesn't have to be real-time or fast. But what I found out is that they have 10 new people coming into their system, like leads who are on their website, and they want to catch them when they're on the website. Imagine yourself going to a website, putting your name, then like downloading a free trial. It's like, I can't use that. And then the salesperson calls you and it's like, OK, let me help you. You know, what a wonderful experience is that? So this is what many companies want to get to. But for that, they need to understand who's the potential customer and who's just a student trying out their system for fun. So what we had to do is continue monitoring the system of our customers, understanding what each time changes. Okay? It can be a change of this person's title in LinkedIn, or it can be something he's doing on the website, and alert them all the time about the new classification. From a machine learning perspective, you have two different challenges here. One is about batch learning, about taking all this data once and building one classifier. And the other one is actually online learning, because we don't want to rebuild all the time. And although there's just like this huge hype of big data, because everybody has big data, and I have many customers who's coming in and it's like, OK, I have tons of data, just use it. And I was like, OK, how much examples do you have? I was like, OK, I have like around 200 examples of customers. It's like, whoa, so much data, right? I can go party with that right now. So, and it turns out that this problem is something that all of them have, right? Many customers come with examples of 200 relevant customers and thousands of irrelevant customers in general, or people that didn't manage to qualify. They call them and just like hanged up. So we ended up with a completely different problem, a small data problem. And it turns out that it has completely different characteristics from a big data problem. So a lot of people here are coming from a search engine where you would say that the algorithm doesn't matter. It just matters how much data you have. And then, OK, statistics is going to do the magic. In our case, we couldn't do that. We ended up with models that are completely overfitted. It means that they're really good at working on the past, but not working on the future customers that they have. And what we ended up doing is building a machine learning classifier that has a function inside that tries to actually do abstraction of the data and not to overfit on it. Meaning that if it sees something that works too well on training and doesn't work well on classification, it's going to drop that. And we ended up building a few models for each customer, then doing this like genetic test for them. Meaning each one that works well is going to continue evolving, and the rest one we're going to just throw it away. So as I said, we're completely dependent on the customer data. We see who they sold to, who they didn't. And salespeople are not, well, not very educated about writing things down in a way that my computer can read that. So we ended up with a lot of noisy data or incomplete data. And then it's like, okay, we're going to go to the web and understand a little bit more. And I want to give you a little bit of a feeling of type of data that we can get. So the first thing that we try to do is, based on the company name, is go to the company's website. Okay? Based on the company website, we're actually trying to extract keywords that identify this company. So we try to identify things like, is it a project management website? Is it a SaaS? Is it a SaaS business? And the way we do it is completely automatic per each one of our customers. So we're extracting all the keywords and then doing some kind of statistical analysis to make sure that it is relevant for their customers. The next thing, we're actually closing deals with different companies that are actually providing us information about how many people are going to the potential customer's website. So we can know, did they come from a search engine campaign? Did they come because they were in a different website? What the keywords they search for before getting to this website as well. The next thing is that even for non-public companies, there's a pretty simple way to understand their financials. So we're building classifiers to understand for a non-public company, how much money is it making? Why? Because if they have tons of money, maybe they're going to buy my product. And it poses a lot of challenges because some of this data you can buy because some people call and it's like asking, okay, how much money is your company making? And maybe they're going to say. But in many cases, we actually have to infer that from the website traffic. And I'll explain how. So think about this fact that a company invests a lot of money to get people to their website. And if they invested a lot of money, it means something about their cycle in life. It means they're a bigger company. And the more they invest in their marketing and adding more people, it actually means they have more money. So based on how many people are coming to their website, we can actually infer about their financials. We also have information about approximately how many employees they have in each department. So I have information about the company of the person, of this potential customer, and I want to understand who this person is. So what we do, we try to understand, is this a technology person, or is it a marketing person, is it a salesperson? Why? Because it's a completely different pitch to each one of them. For one of them, I'm going to say, okay, I have such an awesome product, you can use it in your marketing, and I'm not going to go into details. For a technology person, I'm just going to talk about this awesome Hadoop technology we're using behind the scenes. And the problem is, for different customers of ours, some of them care about either it's a salesperson or not, and some of them care, is it a partner salesperson or a direct salesperson? How do we get to the right granularity? So what we ended up doing is building this huge ontology. We started building it from Wikipedia. And then when we get a title of a person that we buy from different resources, or we can get it from the web, we go through this ontology and try to find the right granularity for each one of our customers. And eventually what we have this process of generating these characteristics of a buyer persona. More than that, we try to identify how senior this person is. And just saying, okay, this person is a director, it's not interesting because in a bank, a director is completely different than being a director in a startup. And the same thing, you can see that if this person is growing in his career really fast, maybe he's more ambitious. So we're actually trying to identify some characteristics of his behavior over time and help the salespeople use that when they sell. So what do we have till now, right? So we have company information, we know who the person is, okay, we're ready to call. But then we can have more information. Many of those companies have what they call marketing automation toolkits, meaning they know exactly what each person is doing on the website, which white papers they downloaded, to which web page they went afterwards, etc. So we're creating different patterns, completely automatic for each customer. Right? So try to find out this thing is that this person first went to our main website, then looked at the about page. Those are usually investors, okay? Because they want to know who are the people working in this company. But if you're going to look at somebody else who's looking at our study cases and downloading a free trial, well, that's a potential customer. So all this problem actually comes down to other things. So, okay, we have all this data and we know how to process it. But given a first name and a last name, how do I know who this person is? And I have very personal information just based on what they fill in the contact form. I have first name, a last name with a mistake, etc. And more than that, some names are pretty common, John Doe's, right? And a John Doe in a small company is usually this was the right John Doe, but in a bigger company, it's not. And we have to deal with those kind of things. The next thing is, because we have so much information coming in from our customers, and we don't want to do services, we have to get to an automatic level. So we're trying to generate what I call features completely automatically, right? Think about generating a complete hypothesis. So we can identify that a certain field in our customer's data is a number, and it's changing over time. So we can apply time series analysis on that. And if we identify it's an email, we have to do text analysis on that. And with time, we're generating more and more features and checking them all the time for our customer to check whether we find something new which correlates with the probability of this customer to buy something from us. So I want to tell you a little bit of a problem of doing those kind of things automatically. So think about this customer that has this field called, is the customer happy inside their database? So everybody who's a customer is going to have a value there, either a yes or a no. And for people who are not customers, it doesn't say anything. It's just like empty. Okay, so wonderful. You train your statistical algorithm. The algorithm is looking at this thing, and it finds out one rule. It says, look at this field and check whether it's not empty. If it's not empty, it's a customer. If it is empty, okay, it's not a customer. Wonderful. Now reality comes in. Tons of customers coming in, 50,000 people from the website. Everybody is getting a not customer label from our system. And why is that? It's because what we trained on is completely different from what we're tested on. So think about like a student. You teach them one thing and you test them on something completely else. So how do you deal with those kind of things? And the problem here is actually is that we're seeing one snapshot of a process. Remember I told you that a sales process is like 12, 15 steps for different customers? And the problem is that we see one snapshot and we have to give them value on the fly. So the first thing that we do, we try to identify those kind of pits, right? And try to filter out those kind of parameters that correlate too well. And the other thing is with time, we're trying to reverse engineer the process that the customer is going on because the salespeople are filling in different things with time. And in some companies, it have 10 steps, 15 steps. And the point for us as a startup is that we don't want to ask them how many steps you have, what sales process you have. We have to completely infer that from the data. And the next thing that I've noticed is that, okay, awesome, they're using the system. And I have this like graph showing out that they're like doubling the conversions. I'm pretty happy. I'm just like, okay, let's go IPO now, okay? And the next thing is coming in is that one of our customers coming back is like, I hate your system. It's like, whoa, well, why do you hate the system? What it is to hate? And it's like, I feel that I don't understand why you marked something as an A. Okay, this is the score. You said it's 90% is going to close, but why? I don't get that. Okay? And more than that, we would say, okay, we started explaining them things. We started saying, okay, did you know that for customers with high website activity and they came with this type of keywords, the potential of you selling to them is much higher? And then it's like, okay, what's the correlation between the website activity and the potential of them buying from me? It doesn't make sense. Of course, it's a proxy of how wealthy the company is, but we're not saying that. We have very raw information. I'll give you an example of, at the beginning, we were showing them different insights. So the insights approximately look like that. 72% of people who dislike licorice understand HTML compared with 58% of people in general, which is statistically correct, which is wonderful. But it's not interesting to anyone, and they would look at us and it's like, okay, not interesting, not buying. And more than that, when we started explaining, some of the times we have very simple things, checking whether the email is correct or not, whether the phone number makes sense in this country. And then I would say, okay, but that's trivial, because I know that. Well, okay, so if you knew that, why did you call 50 people who had the wrong phone number? But you can't explain that to them. And the last thing that the customers wanted, and this is eventually a very human characteristic, they want full control of ranking those things. They know better. And we added up in a reinforcement learning setting. So we rank something as an A, and the customer comes and says, okay, I think it is a B. Okay? And we have to take that into account. So we ended up having two completely different processes. One is very, very precise. The goal is to actually understand conversion and make it higher for this specific customer. And the other one is an explanatory model that tries to explain the first one to the customers, and sometimes even if it makes the cell get lost, right, eventually it has to make sense to people. And this is a problem I didn't anticipate. I would think that people would like to know statistically what's the right thing to do. And even if we show them graphs, it's like, okay, listen, you have the potential of doubling. They want full control, full understanding of this thing. The next thing that we're trying to see, okay, so we're doubling your conversions, wonderful, you could work with that. The next thing they want to do is they want to call somebody and say something, okay, you know what? We went to the same university. Or did you watch this football game yesterday? They want something to do a connection with a person, right? Or what we do today is we try to find out people who they follow on Twitter, for example, and they said something nice about my company. So when I call them, it's like, hey, did you see what this person you follow on Twitter says? Okay, they says, I don't know, we're awesome. Okay, you should use us. Okay, so the main thing is, it's not only that we have to build models that explain themselves, we have to build something that is actionable for the salespeople as well. Well, what I've noticed is that they really love is the fact that you can call somebody and say, okay, you know what, I don't know who your company is or what you're doing, but I just sold to all your competitors. Okay, the pressure, okay, what an amazing thing to do. But the problem is, how, given a company of a potential lead, do we know who the competitors of this company is? So just like to give you a simple explanation of that, we actually go to the websites of those companies and we check semantic similarity of those. And if they're pretty similar, because competitors are pretty similar, we know that. And then we go back to the database of our customer and see how many times they sold to the competitors or not. The last thing which was pretty interesting in this kind of field is group prediction. Okay, usually I would think that you have one person and you're trying to sell to him all the time. But in reality, it's not. There are a group of people, like 5, 6 people. Each one wants something completely else. Right? And more than that, they change. Okay, so one time the manager comes, then he leaves because they got fired or went to another company, and then you have a new person. And each time the algorithm has to adapt to that and to understand the group dynamics from that. And the way we do it, we have a lot of features and characteristics which have something to do with the titles and the personas of those people, and based on that, we're trying to predict the success of the deal. The next thing that we've seen many times is that, okay, listen, this is not a one-person game, right? You have competition. And each time that you're trying to call somebody, your competition is calling them as well. And you want to know the difference. What can you do to understand that this person you're going to lose to the competition and this person you're not? So what we're doing, we have a lot of information from query logs, etc. And then we know what people are searching for in different places. And we know for which keywords our potential customer tends to win versus their competitor. And we try to use this information. And what I want to show you is a little bit of an interesting approach to that, because some of our customers come with information that say, okay, this is the customers that we lost to the competition, and here are the ones that we actually managed to win. And we know the actions they did to actually win them. So think about it as a chess game, okay? And each point you want to think about what step you're going to do to win the competition. Because we can anticipate what your competition is going to do because they already documented that in their history. And we ended up doing a small, let's say, play game around that. It's not a very deep tree, but like 2, 3 steps that eventually tries to tell the salesperson, okay, offer him this discount, talk about this characteristic of your product because we know it is weak in your competitor. And all that completely inferred from the data. And as time continued, what we've noticed is that, well, we ourselves have so many companies using, and sometimes they're competitors of one another. And the system is completely different for each one of them, and it recommends the same person to both. Well, of course, it's relevant. And for me, it's a little bit of painful because I see that I know that for at least one of them, they're going to lose it. And there is nothing I can do because the data is completely private and separate. But what I think about doing about here is that how can we create a standard in business or like in economy? If you know Forrester or Gartner, what they do, they have tons of analysts meet with companies and ask them, okay, what do you think is going to be the next thing in this industry? And they analyze all that, and they have like this huge graph and $4 billion in revenues a year. Okay? And this is what we can do eventually, right? Because we have so much data, we can try to understand what's the right way of selling in each industry. What we've noticed as well is that sometimes we have customers who have several distributors. So for example, VMware is not selling on their own, they have distributors selling. And because those distributors don't know about each other, they're trying to sell to the same people in different directions. And you can imagine how much mess they have in this ecosystem. And well, it's a great pleasure for me to actually bring some kind of order to this ecosystem over time. The next thing that we started seeing is that after, let's say, a year or something like that, our first customers, which were really good, started doing exactly what we told them, right? They started following what we actually graded as an A leads and stopped going and calling the ones which are D. But what's the problem? Okay, they actually were repeating the same history they always did. They never tried to go to a new place. They never randomized what they were doing because they were following exactly the same history that we were telling them. So this is a problem we started actually solving. That's pretty surprising because we see that we stopped improving their conversion because this is the maximum, but we can still do something best. So what we started doing is we're thinking about things and leads which were on the boundaries. Okay, people that in the past we would think they are not good enough. Okay, but this time, from time to time, it's like, you know, try this one. You know, try this one. And from that, we're trying to actually find new markets for our own customers as well. And the next thing that started happening is that many things that happen in business, well, I can optimize their data, but there's still so many things going on around us. So think about like a crisis in the United States. Right? If there's a crisis in the United States, even if nothing happens in Israel, it still affects all of us. We can't sell to the United States at that time because everybody's like afraid. It has like a psychology kind of game. So I'm asking you, like, how can we take all the information like in Bloomberg or like economical information and use that to try to help predict for our customers the externalities, everything that's completely unrelated to them and can affect them? And I want to show you a small example of that, right? So think about tsunami in Japan, and you want to predict the iPad prices. And this is like a real example. So this is tsunami in Japan. The system identifies that it hits the factories in Japan because it knows it's next to the shore. The same factories are providing some of the elements needed to create an iPad in a different factory in China. And how do we know that? Because in some newspaper, somebody wrote this factory gives this information to another factory. The shores and the information about the tsunami comes from different news resources. And then we know that it's going to affect the iPad prices in a completely different place. So what we have, and this is a pretty common thing that's starting happening in many companies who are playing with this news data, is that they're starting to analyze a lot of the cause-effect information in economical newspapers. So think about the following thing. You have a title says that tanker and merchant ship collide. If you apply some kind of analysis on that, like natural language processing, you can actually get to approximate pragmatics level. You can know who did the action, who the action was done to, when and where. And then if somebody wrote an analyst in the field, it says, okay, this caused oil spill off Singapore. So you have like two events that are happening, and they have a cause and effect. Like in the tsunami example, you know that if a product becomes of a shortage, then the prices might go up. So many times it was written. And then you think about creating something which is called like a causality graph. Everything that causes one another, and using that to help different businesses understand externalities. So each time you go into a new market, it would say, okay, you know what? Notice those events are happening in those kind of places. And what we do as a first step is not exactly that, but in the same direction of analyzing news. So think about a company who's going through an M&A process. The chances of you selling to this company are zero because they're like in a mess. If the CEO is leaving, it's not a good time to sell to that. Everybody knows that. But on the other hand, if this company was just published, they found like a security breach, this is the right time to call them and tell them, okay, listen about our security product. And this is the kind of analysis we're starting to do for them. And what I want to talk to you about, and by that finish my lecture, is that a lot of game theory comes on with big data. It started with online advertising, when everybody was talking about like how to actually optimize the right ad for you to see when you're going on Google. And I'm talking about how can you take all that to an offline sales market, right? And what's starting to happen is that we have so many different companies who are completely automated in their sales process using the type of stuff we're doing or different things they have, but you still have humans in the same ecosystem. The same thing happens now in algo trading. You have people who are trying to buy stock, and you have completely automated algorithms. And the problem is, all of them have different incentives. Algorithm is maximizing one thing, a human have a lot of psychology, etc. And we have sometimes even algorithm trying to mimic humans to actually affect their psychology. And I'm trying to think about the next step, right? Where you have a market of both humans and algorithms trying to actually perform an economic action. And this is what I'm starting to see even now. And I think this is just like the next thing for our business and our economy, and I'm super excited about that. And I'll be super glad to get some questions now.